Hi, I am Dr.G.Raman from the Department of English, Sri Malulun College of Arts and Science at Madurai. Today, I am going to talk about literary feminism. According to Aristotle, he is a Greek philosopher. He says that the relation of male to female is by nature uh, a related of superior to inferior of ruler to ruled. Thomas Jefferson says that a woman's position in a house, not in a politics and a public office, as well as Charles Darwin was one of the greatest scientists who found evolution of human theory. He says that man is intellectually superior to woman. Now we have to talk about a literary feminism. The word feminism has been derived from the Latin word femina, the Latin word femina, which means woman, woman, and was first used with regard to the issues of equality by women's rights movement. By women's rights movement. This movement, which movement? These movements established by this women's rights movement started by Elizabeth Cady Stanton in the year of 1920 to 1948, as well as the founder of feminism, was Wilhelmina Drucker. Wilhelmina Drucker was from Netherlands. She was one of the greatest writer and politician, as well as is a social activist, and also she was one of the first Dutch feminist. But the father of feminism was Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, but the mother of feminism was Gloriana Steinem. She was a politician and a social activist. The literary feminism, it is a well-known fact from the beginning of human civilization. The world of literature has been dominated by male writers or male society. Women's writing was excluded from the mainstream culture and literature. Women are actively discouraged by masculine gender. Not only today, in the past, women are always actively discouraged from the literary ambitions by a patriarchal structure of a social society that played by key role of a key role in consigning a subordinate status to women and limiting their role in a society exclusively childbearing and child rearing. For women's writing became the most effective strategy for self-expression and the creation of their own unique and autonomous identity. It became the means of portrayal of struggles that shaped their own lives. Finally, it also became the harbinger of a social and a political change and the medium of exploring the possibilities of creating alternative structures of gender relations in a society. Some critics, some critics claims that women's writing is a distinctive quality as well as the artistic genre that is endowed with its own unique perspective, style, theme, and tradition. Now, the most famous writer. Now, the most famous writer, Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf declares that what she declared? The Virginia Woolf declared that woman's book is not written as a man. The woman's book not written in man would write. Women writers and theorists have put an effort to rewrite not only the rules of what can be said in a literature, but now it can be said in order to express themselves. There, women are expose their own identity. The last tradition of women's writing was retrieved and developed primarily with an American feminist literary criticism since 1970s after the appearance of Mary Ellman's. Mary Ellman's most famous work, are Thinking About Women. It was published in 1968, as well as Kate Millett, as well as Kate Millett's most famous work, Sexual Politics, published in 1969. Some influential works of later half of the 1970s includes Ellen Showalter, includes Ellen Showalter's most important work, A Literature of Their Own. A Literature of Their Own. It published in 1977, and Sandra Gilbert and Susan Guba, their most famous work is Mad Woman in the Attic. It was the publication of Virginia Woolf's. It was the publication of Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, which is a remarkable work by Virginia Woolf. It was published in 1929, which was the most influential in gaining and generating critical interest about women's writing. Virginia Woolf, who was an acclaimed modernist writer, was the most famous and most important writer of the 20th century. She is led building blocks of the nascent feminist critique on women authors. Virginia Woolf is the first feminist theorist. Virginia Woolf is the first feminist theorist. She suggests a distinctive style of women's literature when she urged women to explore the possibility of foregoing their own distinct style and form of use of writing that is free from patriarchal values which devalued women's writers. The Room of One's Own. The Room of One's Own was originally written for a lecture. The Room of One's Own, it is not a work, it is a lecture that she was invited to deliver at Girton College, Cambridge University in 1928. Women and Fiction. Then traitors takes up the charge in inferiority leveled against women in general, and women writers in particular, and presents a powerful materialist analysis of women's oppression. She further emphasized that artistic genius is not a miraculous gift that one is born with, rather than it is a talent that develops among educated and leisured class when two important criteria. There are two important criteria. A woman of one's own, which is a symbolic of independent space for women as an individual, and secondly, financial independence, as well as women as an individual and financial as independence. Now, Virginia Woolf's concept of androgyny. Now, Virginia Woolf's concept of androgyny suggests that though the physical body is divided into sexes, the physical body is divided into sexes, it is possible for the mind to contain the characteristics of both masculine gender and feminine gender. She was also further inspired by the Romantic poet. Virginia Woolf was inspired by the most greatest Romantic poet S.T. Coleridge's notion that the mind of creative genius is antagonist, since the creativity of a true artistic is powered by the harmonious fusion of feminine and masculine traits in their mind. Woolf's notions. Virginia Woolf's notion of the androgynous mind remains till a date controversial topic. Some predominant theorists like Ellen Showalter, Mary Daly, Lisa Rado, and Julia Kristeva dismisses Virginia Woolf's idea of androgyny more as literary woman. It published in 1976 was one of the earliest work of work of Moya that separated women from mainstream literary history to undergo a better understanding of women's literary history. Her works, Moya's works, in one of the earliest feminist projects that charts a literary history of women, compiled from letters, private correspondence, and books written by women authors to examine the fact how women influenced both their lives and writing. Moyes emphasizes or exposes that women's writing was a subversive, rapid, and powerful undercurrent distinct from that not only draw from women's unique expressions but also a secret literary subculture of women often unnoticed by mainstream literature. She also argued that knowledge of feminist literary history was necessary for sound understanding women's writing. Another major theorist, Ellen Showalter, says that an American feminist, Ellen Showalter, she is an American feminist, conceptualized the notion of gynocratism in her essay Towards a Feministic Poetics, published in 1979, is considered an one of the most Towards the Feministic Poetics considers one of the most famous work. It is an alternative to Virginia Woolf's Principle of Antigone for women writers. It became a new critical framework for the interpretation of women's literary history. Gynocriticism, it is a term. Gynocriticism, it is a term, is a historical study of a text written by women that privileges their feminine experience, which distinguishes it as a unique literary tradition. Ellen Showalter. Ellen Showalter claims that Ellen Showalter claims that women's writings are deeply different from women's writings are deeply different from masculine gender's writing, from the unique female life experience. Her pioneering work, A Literature of Their Own, maps a long history of women's writing. In A Literature of Their Own, traces the evolution of a female literary tradition from the Victorian period to the modern period, and divides into three stages. It was divided into three stages. First one is a feminine stage, second one is a feminist stage, third one is a female stage. The feminine stage spanned a period of 40 years. And the feminine stage period of 40 years, beginning in 1840s up to 1880, and includes women writers such as the Bronte sisters, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and Elizabeth Gaskell, as well as George Eliot. These phase, which phase? The feminine stage or feminine phase of imitation, since these women writers imitated to dominant male structures of literary style and tradition. The second stage is a feminist stage, shows the evolution of a female tradition, the spanned period nearly 4 decades, beginning in 1882 to 1920. The period witnesses the rise of suffrage movement and demands for equal rights for women, and thus was marked by a protest against male-centered literary traditions. Writers such as Mary Baden, Mona Light, and Sarah Grand are included in this phrase. Now, the third stage. Is a female phase. Is an ongoing stage that began in 1920. The last stage is a period of self-discovery. This is the last stage. Period of self-discovery and freedom. And Showalter further divides this phase into two sections. The first half of the female phase, Showalter classifies writers like Dorothy Richardson and Catherine Mansfield and Virginia Woolf. This early stage of the female phase was characterized by a dual legacy of a feminine, self-hearted and a feminist withdrawal that that influenced the authors to turn a separate literature of inner subjective mind. The second half of the female stage begins in 1960. The second half of the female stage begins in 1960, and the writers who wrote in this phase are Iris Modic, Muriel Spark, and Doris Lessing, who are transgressed the boundaries of rules of the proper stuff of fiction. It utilized their anger against patriarchy. It was utilized their anger against patriarchy, and the Ellen Showalter advised a new theoretical framework of feminist criticism that she called gynocriticism in her seminal essay towards feminist poetics. In this essay, Showalter outlines two modes of feminist criticism. There are two modes of feminist criticism: the ideological, which is concerned with the woman as a reader and consumers of literature written by men. This criticism is the misinterpretation of a stereotypical depiction of women in literature written by men. The second mode of feminist criticism focus on women as a writer, or what Showalter calls gynocriticism, and it's a criticism concerned with the woman as a writer and producer. Woman as a writer and producer of a literary text. It is exclusively focus on the history, style, theme, genres, and structures of writing by a woman. Ellen Showalter then goes on to present four models that have been used by current feminist criticism to analyze literature written by women. These models are biological, linguistics, psychoanalytic, and cultural theory. Thanks to all for watching my video.